Good morning or good afternoon for those of you joining us from Eastern Time. My name is Connie Kasha, and I will be moderating our discussion today with our panelists around Ready for Big School. I hope everyone had an opportunity to review the documentary and which we'll be discussing with our panel of experts during this next hour. Everyone except our panelists will remain on mute during this event in order to ensure background noise is kept to a minimum. You will also have an opportunity to submit questions in the question box found at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and you can do that throughout this presentation. You can also chat with the moderators and other participants through the chat box, but please be sure to use the question box for any questions that you would like us to address. Following this presentation, you will receive a survey through the email address that you provided for this event. And through this survey, you will have an opportunity to share your need for additional pyramid model information, as well as training opportunities. We will address any unanswered questions in this email and include information on viewing a recording of this event. Before I introduce our panelists, I want to provide a few parameters around the pyramid model practices. First, we want everyone to understand that the pyramid model is a framework around social and emotional practices and not a curriculum or one more thing for teachers, coaches, administrators, or families that they need to implement. And it's based on the public health model. The principles and concepts associated with the pyramid model are easily integrated into any program, curriculum, or family setting. Second, we recognize that children often use challenging behavior when they don't have more appropriate behaviors or skills to accomplish the goal, or communicate in more appropriate ways. That is why our focus is on teaching children new skills rather than trying to get them to stop using challenging behaviors. Third, and possibly the most important part to understand, is that implementation of the pyramid model does not happen overnight. It is a process of training and coaching, evaluation, reflection, and making modifications. Program staff and families must realize that change takes time and plan accordingly. So let's meet our panelists. They will each introduce themselves and share a little bit about their experience and background with the pyramid model. And so first we're going to hear from Phil Acord. Take it away, Phil.
Thank you, Connie, and good morning to you and good afternoon to all the rest of us. I'm Phil Acord. I'm CEO at Chambliss Center for Children in Chattanooga, Tennessee. To tell you a little bit about the agency itself has been around for like 149 years, but we've been doing early childhood education since 1969. And today we're licensed for about 380 children on our main campus, and then we manage 6 off-site centers that take care of another 300 children. And then we work in the school system, taking care of the children of teachers. All in all, any given day, we have responsibility for about between 700 and 800 children between 6 weeks of age and 12 years of age. And we also have a residential program in foster children and transitional living and all that. So, when I met Mary Louise Hemner, I think was her name, from Peabody way back when, we were desperate. We used to utilize the RIP program, a regional intervention program, way back when, before we had the pyramid and received training through that particular model. And that the RIP, one of our agencies sits directly across the street from a housing project. And, we had 2 and 3 year olds, that cuss like sailors and could, just about throw a desk across the room at you. They were stout and independent, and, they came from environments where there was not any parameters or boundaries or basic principles. They just were kind of let to go, on their own every day, and a lot of exposure to domestic violence, substance abuse. I mean, just lots of environmental situations, that influence their behavior. So when the pyramid model came, I went, and many of us from Chattanooga, Dr. Brenda Benford and others went. Donna Shields was there, to try to obtain some skills and insights and understanding of what we could do to support the directors of these programs that had these children in their classrooms every day that really just need help with their behavior and also. Anyway, my experience was a very positive one. So I'm glad to be part of this panel today and look forward to the discussion.
So next we're going to hear from Belva Weathersby.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was supposed to turn it over to Belva. And now
Okay.
I'd like to Belva Weathersby and to introduce herself. Belva.
Thank you so much, Phil. I am Belva Weathersby, and it is my distinct pleasure to serve as the Director of Early Education and Youth with the City of Nashville-Davidson County Metropolitan Action Commission, where we operate a variety of programs and services inclusive of a pretty nice size early education program, youth services, family and community services, workforce training and development, all focused together on 2 generational transformational services, utilizing what we call and have come to love as the human service value curve. Also, we embrace the pyramid model, promoting resilience in people and programs. I've had the opportunity to serve many children, youth, adults, families, and communities in a variety of roles across the country over the past 38 years. I think I started it too, since I must just be 40. But most recently as the Head Start Collaboration Director in the Department of Education. One of the things that is common and has been across my career is that I have had a focus on possibilities, on equity, and access to opportunities for all people. I've had the privilege to serve on the Team Tennessee leadership group, as you know, focused on the pyramid model, the Association for Infant Mental Health in Tennessee as the Advisory Council immediate past chairman, and the Tennessee Young Child Wellness Council, and more. I've come to appreciate the value of just being anchored in philosophical ideas that promote resilience and transformation and well-being across. Head Start, of course, models across the comprehensiveness of services for all of children and all of families. And so this fits so very perfectly in that model. I think of Stanley Greenspan's quote that reminds us that all children have within them the potential to be kids. It's our job to create a great world where this potential can flourish. I'm glad to meet you all today. But next, let us welcome our next panelist, Ms. Donna Shields. Donna, tell us a little bit about yourself and the great work that you are doing.
I am Donna Shields. I've been working in the early childhood field for nearly 24 years now. I currently work for Hamilton County Schools in the voluntary pre-K program. I've been with them for 11 years now. In that program, we do collaborate with Center for Chambliss Children and Families, and also with the City of Chattanooga Head Start, Early Head Start program. I do work with teachers, teacher assistants, children and families, and other staff that are any part of a child's school team. I have had the opportunity with the Teaching Pyramid model to attend the Train the Trainer training back in 2008 with the Center on Social and Emotional Foundations for Early Learning It was a team train. It was awesome. It was a week long. It was intense. It was great. We walked away with a lot of valuable information of the framework. I was involved with CEFL when they rolled out their pilot program, which was actually piloted at Shambla Center for Children and Families. That was in 2008-2009 school year. I was an internal coach and an external coach during that time. I actually kind of assisted helping put together from the Shambla Center the Big School, Ready for Big School video, which I was really proud of to be part of. I also attended a 3-day CEFL leadership training to help prepare the team for the pilot program. I've conducted state trainings for other counties. I am deemed reliable on the TPOT, that's the Teaching Pyramid Model Observation Tool. I have trained all of our pre-K staff, including exceptional education pre-K teachers and their assistants. And what we do in our program is that teachers get trained, new teachers get trained every year. They come back a second year for the same training just to reinforce. I've also had the privilege to provide pyramid model training for a couple of our districts' kindergarten learning communities, which involve teachers, assistants, school counselors. So I've really had a good wealth of training around the framework of the pyramid model. I would like to next introduce our next panelist, Tanika Johnson.
Thanks, Donna. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Tanika Johnson, and I am a licensed professional counselor, mental health service provider, a licensed mental health counselor. I'm also a certified clinical trauma professional, and I also do current work as an education consultant, where I am also a licensed psychologist, a licensed psychology and special education teacher. I also would like to share that I am a National Center for Pyramid Model Innovation Second Cohort Fellow, and I have a wealth of experience with education consulting and serving the special education community and the exceptional needs of children, adolescents, and adults with disabilities. Over the course of my career, I've also served in the capacity of an early childhood specialist, mentor, advisor, evaluator, and as well as a contributing faculty member. I would also like to share that as a practitioner and researcher, my expertise really focuses a lot on social and emotional development and the psychological impact of children and adolescents. As it relates to the pyramid model, I facilitated discussion forums that have focused on positive behavior support and intensive individualized interventions for children exhibiting challenging behaviors. I've offered training on the proper implementation of functional behavior assessments and behavior intervention plans. And I've also advocated for the use of tools that allow for early intervention, remediation, and progress for children exhibiting positive behaviors. Along the way, I've also worked with the state of Tennessee Department of Education as a Common Core coach for breathing intervention. My future work entails designing a parents or partners in education advocacy training that will be delivered through a virtual summit or a webinar. I really hope that everyone has some great takeaways and really have a wonderful experience as we continue with this webinar.
Thank you, Tanika, and all of you for giving us such a great background. And as you heard, we have an exceptional panel of experts with the pyramid model. So let's just kind of dive into some questions and some parameters again around the pyramid model. So we know that the pyramid model provides a tiered framework of evidence-based practices for promoting the social, emotional, and behavioral development of young children. And the primary focus is on the promotion and prevention, and then moving on to individualized interventions only when the bottom of the pyramid is in place and children continue to engage in challenging behaviors. So Donna, can you share a little bit about how this approach has supported the children who exhibit challenging behavior, as well as all the children in the programs that you've worked with and or amongst siblings at home?
Absolutely. The approach of the teaching pyramid model has been more than effective in reducing challenging behaviors in our program. We have many challenging behaviors, and it's been observed that when we have the bottom two tiers in place, the number of challenging behaviors do get reduced. So what we do is we start out with a strong focus on tier 1 and 2, which we should, and building those relationships is key. One of the first steps that I really support our teachers in and helping them to achieve is to making a strong emotional connections with children. Sometimes we have children and their behaviors, we start out the school year, behaviors don't start out and surface right away, but there are some, and we've had some this year. Day one, I was called for support for some challenging behaviors. And it's really important to help those teachers make that emotional connection with that child. So that's something that we really focus on helping them do. And that could be, it might look like making sure that they have classroom rules developed and make sure that they're posted with pictures. Any supports that we suggest or I suggest, we make sure that we provide our teachers with the necessary resources they need to be able to implement them into the classroom. We talk about expectations, developing those as well, making sure they're clear and concise. Children understand what the expectations are. We set up the visual supports, of actually when you're greeting a child, that's a telltale sign right there, how a child enters your building and enters into your classroom. In a warm and friendly welcoming. So what we've done this year is we have our greeting boards posted up. Children get to choose what greeting they want. Now this year's a little different with COVID, but it could be an elbow bump, an air high five, things like that, just to make that connection with that child. It's quick, it's easy for teachers to do in the morning, but it just makes that connection with children. We also promote the feelings chart, where we're making sure that we're helping children understand the different feelings, what it feels like, painting a picture for them of what their body feels like, what their body's doing. So it's really important to promote feelings and start talking about that with children. The feelings chart we also use as a check-in system for children in the morning. They can go to the feelings chart, say how they're feeling. The important thing is they may feel frustrated, they may be upset, maybe they had a fight with their sibling before they left the house, or they couldn't get the cookie that they wanted from mom. But to let them know that they're feeling this way now, but that their feelings can change throughout the day, and help and provide them with the different feelings that could possibly occur for them. Another strong part we put in is a daily picture schedule. This has to be posted and it has to be utilized. We really encourage our teachers, even though it's recommended and required, well, actually required, that they have the daily picture schedule. We want to be able to see them utilizing and help children transition from one activity to another. Another big thing that I truly really love are directional cue cards for prompting. We were really lucky when Cephal first came out, and they gave us a really nice toolkit, but there's still even access on the internet for these directional cue cards, and they would be picture cards that represent maybe sit, raise your hand, use a quiet voice. They are amazing for prompting, just holding up the cue card, letting the child actually see it. This way, during, for example, if it was a whole group activity going on, instead of interrupting the teacher, the assistant interrupting a teacher, asking a child to sit down, assistant or the teacher, whoever chooses to hold the card, sometimes both do in our programs, just hold up the card, point to the child's seating spot. And it's amazing how a child can just look at that card, look at their spot, maybe think about it for a second and sit back down. And there was no interruption, no downtime, no instructional time lost. So I love the directional cue cards. We teach problem solving skills. We're real big on the solution kit cards, teaching them, having them posted within the classroom where children can get them and utilize those. Tucker Turtle, we love Tucker Turtle. Our teachers read the social story. We post the Tucker Turtle steps. We actually teach these skills. We were and are sending home the Tucker Turtle scripted story to a lot of our families. I love the new Tucker Turtle for Home social story that came out. So that's been a real big hit this year that we've been sending home with our families for them to be able to work on those skills at home as well. Teaching children self-regulation skills. We use the relaxation thermometer for that. That's posted. Again, we don't just post it, we make sure we're teaching these skills whole group and individually if that's what we need. The peer-mediated skills are really important, teaching kids to share, take turns. We have those posters that are required to be posted and taught as well. We can introduce those, the teachers are able to introduce those one at a time, so it's not all of the skills at once, but that's how we utilize that. There are many other social stories. And then something that I like to try to help teachers with is we use the teapot, the red flags checklist. That's a real nice gauge for the beginning of the school year to help support teachers in the approach with implementing the teaching pyramid model.
It sounds like you've implemented a lot of the lower, the tier universal practices and it's seeing some changes in supports there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. And one of the things we want to try to do is make sure that folks are aware of the tools, and we'll talk a little bit about having those tools in just a little bit here. So we know that the framework is intentionally for supporting social and emotional foundations, and that these practices are applicable to early childhood classroom practitioners, home visitors, coaches, administrators, and families. And we saw that throughout the documentary, that we want to make sure that everyone that works with a child is aware of the social and emotional needs of children and how we can support that. So in one of the roundtable discussions, we heard a school administrator say that we need to teach behavior expectations just like we teach a child to read. So how do we do that? How do you reinforce and support direct service staff with making this connection? Belva, would you like to start, or Phil? And you're both on mute. There we go.
It is so very important when we look at organizationally how we infiltrate that into our organization, determining that that has to be that organizational structure and then that commitment to implementing the pyramid model. And it becomes, and I'll say this several times in our time together, it then becomes our way of being, our way of thinking, our way of operationalizing, our way of working with each other, our way of working with families, our way, of course, working with young children, no matter what age they might be. So that is so very critical to making sure that we have that structure in place, and that there's that organizational commitment to the framework. As I shared earlier, we embrace lots of frameworks, a couple of key frameworks in our organization, and we latch on to something that we can build upon that creates, as you mentioned earlier, builds on such strong foundations upon which we can continue to build skills, build structure, build around our resources, build an environment and people in that environment that are on the same page and that are committed to building the resilience and building our children for as they make ready for whatever their next phase in life might be. And so that's, I'll stop there in case Phil or anyone else has anything else to add.
Thank you.
You know, we use Donna a lot. They used to think she was part of our staff, but she was over here so many times. So, you know, it's like teachers need constant support. They really do. And with the children on a day-to-day basis, because when you're primarily serving, which our agency does, low income, children from low income households, typically headed by a single parent, you know, and maybe multiple siblings, you know, who are struggling every day with just survival skills, you know, housing, food, transportation, you know, all those things that impact the mother and trickle down to the children, you know, and they bring their child into the classroom, you know, someone mentioned this earlier, it might have been Donna or Connie, but you know, you never know what crisis they've dealt with that day. And so teachers have the skills, but they also have in a 4-year-old classroom, 12 other children, you know, and in a 3-year-old classroom, 8 other children in addition to that child. And so, you know, as an administrator or a director of education or whatever, you know, you never, you know, you teach all those, the skills at the bottom of the pyramid, you know, you try to equip them with we love the Tucker turtle. I mean, he's our favorite. I mean, you know, we use him all the time. Unfortunately, we need a lot of Tucker turtles in our classroom sometimes. We have multiple children, you know, that are having meltdowns and they need a time and they need something that they can identify with and divert their crisis that's going on in their mind. So, you know, we try to access training. We not only worked with Donna, we worked with her more when she was with Head Start. Now they're not as, she's got so many more responsibilities with the school system. You know, it's not as easy to access. And the problem is, you know, you have turnover with your staff, you know, so, you know, one of my challenges is how to, you know, yes, all these teachers receive training, you know, in the pyramid model. They understand a lot of the basic principles of social emotional, not only that, behavior management principles, you know, how they need to intervene and work with the child, but, you know, and that teacher's gone, you know, those 2 of those 6 teachers are gone now. So now I've got to come back in, you know, and you've got to do the co-teachers too. And then of course, the parents actually are a critical piece of that puzzle, you know, how to redirect and reshape and modify the behavior of that child. So, you know, when you're doing that along with dealing with the curriculum and, you know, and implementing everything else that has to be done, sometimes it's just an overwhelming task, you know, for the teacher in the classroom on a day-to-day basis. And of course, in living in the period that we're living in now with COVID, being sort of an overarching concern and sort of a distractor from, you know, implementing a lot of the basic principles. You know, you're worried about exposure, and you know, some of the ages the children were wearing masks, and you know, so it's, you know, it's really complicated, but you know, it's absolutely essential when you're working with the children that we're working with. So we need more Donnas, more training, you know, more tools. So back to you, Connie.
Yeah, so really good point. And we also heard that, you know, when things aren't working in the classroom or that there are issues at home that you alluded to as well. So we want to try to provide those supports, and it's more than, as you said, just the teacher. And when you have turnover, you also want to make sure that there's other people that know those practices and whatnot. And so Tanika, maybe talk a little bit about how do we support families, support teachers without them feeling like we're picking on them or blaming them, because sometimes we have that feeling of, well, it's the parent's fault or it's the teacher's fault. And we want to make sure that that's not the message that we're sharing.
Absolutely. I think first and foremost, we have to recognize that we have to meet families where they are, and understanding that they're using the best tools that they have for raising their children. Parenting does not come with a manual. Therefore, we have to reframe our mindsets to encompass one fundamental concept. Parents desire what is best for their children. And as professionals in the education sector, we have to reflect upon our own thoughts and our own emotions as we're receiving constructive feedback, whether it's about our instructional practices or classroom management techniques, and even about professional development pathways. Just as parents will have to reflect upon receiving difficult feedback about their child's challenging behavior. If we kind of view it from a standpoint of a partnership, a collaboration, or a multidisciplinary team that is child or student focused and is centered on the child's behavior and not just that individual child or that child's personality, then that's when we can start to empower educators and parents to be solution-focused experts with one goal in mind, the child. So I think some of like the key things to kind of take away from that is that we have to keep in mind that we are helping. We're not just focusing and pointing out problematic behaviors. We have to recognize that as parents, we want the perfect child. So when we hear this type of feedback, sometimes it can build a little bit of resentment. So what we want to do is empower parents by encouraging them to be to have cooperation, to be able to take it in as we are working collaboratively to be able to help the child, and we all care about this child. We want to address, specific concerns and, examples of behavior. It can't be what I heard. It can't be hearsay. You can't reflect upon what the last educator said about this child. What you have to focus in on is, what is the behavior that you're trying to change? It's not the child that we're trying to change. We have to accept the child. It's the behavior that we're trying to change. And when we're talking to parents, we don't want them to feel as though this is a punitive type of feedback experience. We want to talk to them in the same respect that we want our administrators or our supervisors or coaches to talk to us in a calm and cordial tone. We don't want parents to feel as if their children are hopeless cases. Their children are not lost causes. So we got to be optimistic about this. But most importantly, we can't let a child or a parent walk away without giving them the tools and the resources, the support, the training that they need in order to be able to make this happen.
I couldn't agree more. And I see lots of head nodding here too. And I personally believe that every parent does the very best that they can. Is it what we want them to do all the time? Not necessarily, but we need to recognize what parents are capable of doing. And as you shared, find out what can we support them? How do we support them with that challenging behavior and what they see as an issue on that? Great point. Don, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that before we go on to the next question.
I think that was an awesome explanation. And I'm sitting here thinking, as we have to conduct parent meetings, I try to put myself in their spot when I was a young mom, and I was a young mom. I was a teenage mom. And I think about when I got called in for a conference with my son, and how I felt walking into the school building. Although I had been in it many times, it was a different approach coming in because I was asked to come in. So I always put myself in that spot, and I totally agree with Tanika. You need to make parents feel that you are there to support them. That you are there to help them in any possible way we can. It is not about the child, it is about the behavior, and you have to make sure that we stay focused on that. So that's just something that I always take into a meeting. And again, you hit it nicely, Tanika, when you said you have to meet parents where they are. Connie, you may have said it. You have to meet parents where they are, not where we think they should be. And again, you may not have had a chance to establish a relationship with that parent prior to your first encounter with them, but you can start right from that point and build that relationship where we can start building trust together.
Thank you. Yeah, so kind of a third point, the pyramid model is a collaborative model and should speak to cultural diversity, equity, and inclusivity. The players include practitioners, family members, programs, and systems. So Phil, maybe talk a little bit about how you have worked to ensure that families, teachers have the support and the respect they deserve, and that your discussion reflects cultural diversity, equity, and inclusivity.
Well, we're very fortunate in that we are collaborative partners big time with Head Start, Early Head Start. And we also work with the school system. We have 2 pre-K classrooms located here. So I'm not bashful at all about asking my collaborative partners to send their experts in to help our staff deal with the children and issues. And, we try to, I think we try to be mindful and considerate and sensitive to all the various cultures and the diverse children that are in our program. And when I look at children, I try to look at them as individuals and consider their families. And consider where where the experiences that they bring with them. And you've got to do that not only from the perspective of the children, but you've got to teach that to your teachers, and your administrators, and then as your partners come in, you need to make sure you're all on the same page, as you begin to interact with. The problem is, we have such a shortage of resources to help us in these areas. And so it's not like you have a menu, or a long list of people to select from, whether you're dealing with someone who English is a second language, or you're dealing with someone that, most of our children in our program, are African-American, and most of them, like I said, come from low income, primarily single parents. So that's almost a culture and I want to be careful how I classify it, but it's, I've been to Dr. What was her name? Oh man, I cannot believe that I've just forgotten one of my heroes in my whole life. That she did extensive training, on the various socioeconomic groups and working with children in poverty. Ruby Payne, Dr. Ruby Payne. If you've been Dr. Ruby Payne, she is my hero. I'm sorry, Ruby, that I forgot you. And I've been to her week-long training, and she's been to Chattanooga. The thing that she says over and over again is that, I'm an old white guy. I cannot put myself. I don't have a common point of reference. As hard as I try to empathize and to sympathize and to understand, it's so I need to listen to the parents. I need to listen to my colleagues and my staff who understand better, what the issues are, and we need to empower them. A lot of times, what I need to do is just shut up and step back and let staff and appropriate people, interact with. And sometimes it's difficult because the children we're working with and the parents that we work with sometimes are very angry and they're lashing out and they're causing all types of disruptions. And, and we know the statistic about the number of children who are expelled from early childhood education programs because of their behavior or because of the behavior of their families. And that's the easy way. And when I went to the pyramid training to begin with, that was one of the primary things I was trying to obtain skills for my staff to counter. That's not the solution. They're just going to go to another child care program and they're going to experience the same thing, and the number of expulsions of 3 and sometimes 2, 3, and 4-year-olds is just alarming and disgraceful, really. And it's because we don't have the resources, we don't have the sensitivity, we don't invest the time and energy that we need to in seeing each child and each family as unique individuals and with unique problems and issues that need to be addressed, in that parameter, and responded to accordingly. So, like I say, Donna knows I've called her many, many times. You can talk to my Head Start person. Part of the problem is, and we all know this, it's like Head Start, I believe, if I'm right, Donna, 2 or 3 mental health people on their staff.
Yes, there are 2.
2. All right. Well, they have
their mental health coordinator.
900 children. They have
Right.
900 children that they have responsibility for, and 2 mental health staff. See, and so, and Donna, I don't even want to ask you what the statistic is in public school. It's probably worse than that, because I was just looking at the nursing statistic the other day. 1 nurse to every 3,000 students. So, we as a society, if we're going to make a difference and give these children a chance, and help them with their behavior and to modify that behavior so that it's acceptable, in the classroom environment or out there in society's environment, we've got to invest money in training people to help them as early as possible, so that when they get to big school, when they get to Donna, they already have the skills, and and the family has gotten the support, in order to address that in appropriate, culturally appropriate format, and taking into consideration where they're coming from, who they are, and what their needs are. So, and that's hard. I'll not lie to you. I mean, do we have this down and have we perfected this? Absolutely not. Are we continuing to fight every day to try to create that sensitivity and that knowledge and recruit those resources that we need to address that? Absolutely. But anyway.
Always a work in progress, just as I said, that this doesn't happen overnight. And Melissa Binkley's been monitoring question and answer box and has something to share with us.
Yeah, I was interested. I know we've got representation here from across the state, and I was wondering for Belva or Tanika or both of you, what that process looks like in Middle and West Tennessee as well.
Yeah, I'll go first. At Metro Action Commission, we serve over 12 languages and folks from all over the world. And one of the things that we've learned in the context of behavior, that we have, cultural diversity, but cultural inclusivity, because we have such a variety of cultures that come with that, all kinds of behaviors that mean different things. And so just being able to understand and embrace that. So we do some things very intentionally for the 1,365 children that we are privileged to serve, and also the over 20,000 served in the Head Start community across the state. Have to really focus on being culturally aware, culturally responsive, but not only culturally responsive, very aware of varied abilities. I come from a background with developmental disabilities, and so that always resonates with me as another area of difference that we have to be mindful of as we look at behavioral support, looking at just varied abilities at any level, but also looking at children with diagnosed disabilities, and we have quite a few children with autism. And so looking at their communication, as it were, and being able to support that in a way that is consistent with the pyramid model. So just really that, but understanding and working in the context of culture in our behavior and making that, again, I will say that over and over again, just a part of our organizational culture, that we are culturally sensitive and responsive, and that be our priority from our executive director across all levels of our organization, that it has to again be, and I'll give credit to AIM High Tennessee, our way of being. All the time and in every situation, we have to be thoughtful, we have to be intentional in terms of our understanding and our intervention.
Thank you, Belva. Tanika, did you want to add what's happening in West Tennessee? Thoughts on that?
I'll be very brief because I can go on for days discussing these topics.
You can do this all day long, right?
I can do this all day long, but
Yeah.
I look at this from a variety of lens, and I look at it from an education perspective, a mental health perspective. I look at it even as my own personal experiences. And I think in the year 2021, we still got a lot of work to do. We have a lot of barriers to break down in terms of educational disparities, economic inequality. We have to work on inclusivity. We have to work on equity, and we got to make sure that across the board, no matter if our children and our families are in rural, suburban, or even if they're in the inner city or urban communities, we got to make sure that across the board that children, families, and educators have what they need in terms of resources and tools to be able to teach children in the same capacity as you would, regardless of what their zip code is or where they are in terms of developmentally, cognitively, or chronologically. So we still have a lot of work to do. We've made some gains, but until we take on more of the knowledge base that all, not some, all children deserve a chance to be productive citizens, until we can take that on and break down these barriers, then we still got work to do.
Absolutely. And we are just one of lots of different things out there to help support that. But, as Phil alluded to earlier, Walter Gilliam is the big researcher looking at children in preschool are expelled 3 times as often as children in K-12 or K-3, I'm sorry. And part of that is our early childhood providers, our parents, don't know. And when you don't know, you do the best you can, right? Or you say, I can't serve this child. And so the child is expelled. And so we heard Donna talk a lot about some of the tools that children or that the teachers have that help support that. Do you have any recommendations for programs to build their capacity to support staff, to meet families' needs? What do you think we need to do a better job in helping educate and support families and providers, educators, caregivers for young children?
Would you like me to answer?
Sure. Yeah, anybody step up there. Thanks, Donna.
One of the things that we've done this year that I'm really proud of in our program is that we, since we were on remote learning for some of the time, we got together and we do parent trainings virtually. We record them. One piece of it is academics. The other piece is social emotional. So each week that we were on remote learning, we got a topic and did a PowerPoint about it, but it was all about strategies that parents could use at home. And it honed in just on one specific topic. We lasted the training for about 45 minutes to 50 minutes. Usually after that, parents, it's hard for them. But along with everything that we talked about in those parent trainings, we made sure that resources were available and provided to the parents as well. And then what I always do, and I know I'm just one, but I certainly don't mind, is I share my information for contact, that if parents want to get a hold of me privately, individually, and I can help guide them with the strategies, materials, a direction to use at home to help with challenging behavior, I do that. So that's been really successful.
And I think one of the things, so I support a home and community-based early intervention program. And one of the things that we look at when we're connecting with families is what's called setting the stage. And so making sure that families know that we care about them as well, and looking at their own health and their well-being, because if they're not well, if we're not well, it's very hard to meet the needs of a child who also is having some health issues as well. Tanika, did you want to chime in on that as well?
Yes, I wanted to add that in the program-wide positive behaviors supporting young children's social emotional development and addressing challenging behaviors booklet, it was written by Dr. Lisa Fox, Susan Jack, and I hope I'm not butchering Linda's last name, but Linda Broyles. One of the key things that really hit home was that when they said, and I want to read it verbatim, the training of staff would be an essential piece of the effort, but much more would be needed for sustained change to occur. And the implementation of a program-wide model involved changes on all levels, including policy, administrative practices, the allocation of resources, relationship with community partners, staff training, ongoing professional development, ongoing technical assistance, staff support, classroom practices, and most importantly, partnership with families. So I think that really hits a lot of what we really need to do in order to build capacity.
Thank you. And as we've talked about, there's lots of tools out there. There's lots of resources. It takes all of us in order to do that. And we also know that it takes more than just going to a training. So several of you, we asked a question, about how much you knew about the pyramid model, and about a third of you had absolutely no information about it. A third said you've been to some trainings and were doing some implementation. And another third said you were doing more around the pyramid model. So we've been doing this since 2008, trying to get the word out. So that's kind of interesting to know, just based on who's with us today, what their background is with that. And so we know, as Phil talked about and Donna, that we need coaches. And Tanika, it takes more than just doing the training. It takes that follow-up and that commitment, the community collaboration in order to do that. Some of you have asked some questions about resources. And so when we do the follow-up to this, you'll have an opportunity to ask about some additional resources or questions specific to the things that you do there. So because we've got about 7 minutes left here, we want to get each panelist to give kind of some final thoughts, maybe a special quote that they have, and kind of wrap up the things from today. So I didn't have an order for this, so I don't know who might want to go first.
I'll go first. So
all right. We're going to ask you to keep it a little brief so everybody has an opportunity. Thanks,
it
Bill.
should be ladies first, right? I don't know what I'm doing. I guess I'm just taking the age. I'm playing the age card here. I'm old.
Okay, there you go.
That's good to do. I think, intentionality is something that Belva mentioned earlier. And it's just that we as a state, have got to understand that this is not a sprint. This is a major marathon, and that we have a serious lack of resources in this area. And we need to partner with our ACEs friends out there, because a lot of the same basic principles are in play in the lives of children in both of these particular scenarios, or environments. So, I just would think as an advocate, we have got to convince the powers that be, either in a General Assembly, at the administrative level, or at the commissioner level, that if programs, early childhood education programs, school programs, people working with children and youth are going to be able to turn around their behavior and help these families, we've got to have help. We need people, and we started out really strong because there was funding for it. We all went to the training, we had coaches, we had resources, and then the funding went away, and so did the resources and all that. So, we've got to get back to that level, and we've got to maintain it. We can't, it's not like a shot in the arm, or unfortunately, it's not like a vaccine. You just don't take it and you're okay then. That's not the way it works. So, but my quote, you said a quote, and I hang quotes off of my lamp on the corner of my desk, and I glanced up, and the one that I really like, and says, the more healthy relationships a child has, the more likely he will be to recover from trauma and to thrive. Relationships are the agents of change, and the most powerful therapy is human love. So,
Thank you. That's a great one for sure.
And I'll go next and be brief. But Franklin D. Roosevelt said it this way. He said, "We cannot always build the future for our children, but we can build our children for the future." And so just in final thoughts, just think that the fact that we can create an environment and a culture that promotes that self-identity, that self-regulation, that sense of competence, relationship building, conflict resolution, cooperative play, moral development, resilience, and readiness for school and for life. We have got to infuse the framework with intentionality again in our organizational culture, and provide the tools that team members and family needs to understand and implement the concepts. We must also make sure that we are considering staff wellness. People can't give you from an empty cup. And so we've got to make sure that we are pouring into our team members such that they have the capacity to pour into others.
Absolutely.
We must continue to allow this to be our way of being, and thereby impacting the trajectory of our youngest learners. One child, one family, and one community at a time, realizing that we are planting seeds and trees under whose shade we may never sit. Thank you.
Thank you, Belva. Well said.
And in the words of Malcolm X, we need more light about each other. Light creates understanding. Understanding creates love. Love creates patience, and patience creates unity.
Love it. Thank you, Tanika.
My thought is, when you take the time and you load the necessary social and emotional skills on the front end, in the end, you have equipped a child who will be able to manage difficult emotions, impulses, embody empathy, and grow to be confident.
Love it. Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
I want to thank you all first for your time today and your knowledge and willingness to share it. Some folks are asking about your emails, if we can share those emails with them. And we can do that when we send out the follow-up email here. But I also want to thank the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services and their support of Tennessee Voices to continue the work that was started in 2008. I also want to thank the members of Team Tennessee who supported the idea of this webinar and helped to make it happen. Again, thank you to the panelists and our listeners for your participation in today's webinar. We hope that we triggered some positive ideas about the importance of the pyramid model practices for both caregivers and teachers of young children, as well as for the well-being of children. As we said, it takes us all. I also want to thank Tennessee MTSU Center for Education Media for helping us set this up and make this a great event for everyone joining us today. So as I said, please look for an email with the address you use to register. And through that, you'll have an opportunity to share your need for additional information. You'll get our contact information as well. And I want to close with a quote from Ashia Siddiqui, who's a scientist and an author, who said that be who you needed when you were younger. So thank you and have a great day.